Brothers and sisters, this is Dr. Makemba. We once again welcome you and invite you to join us on this platform as we are yet again engaging you and we continue discussing very pertinent subject matters on our Wonders of Wisdom series. Today we are going to be looking at yet another interesting subject matter. Today we are talking about hard work. Basically we are going to be looking at what hard work is, its importance and placement in our life, and why we need to work hard. Basically, by definition, hard work is simply put as a great deal of effort or endurance. In other words, hard work has everything to do with you putting in the hours, diligently going after that which you have desire to do, and giving it your very best. And the value of hard work is actually in working hard. If you really want to, reap the fruit of working hard, you got to work hard. And inconsistency is where power is found. So you don't just work hard for a month or 2 months and then you'll be lazy for the rest of the year. So you got to work hard, but you have to be consistently working hard. You don't just, it's not a hit and run kind of an approach. So if you are going to derive maximum value from working hard, you got to work hard on a consistent basis. You got to put in the hour in everything you do in life. If you are in business, you got to put in all the hours. If you are a minister of the gospel, a pastor, you got to put in the hours in, building up people, in leading people in the right direction. If you are a business leader, maybe you are a CEO of a corporation, you have to put in the hours. If you are a political leader, you have to put in the hours. It's very important that we become individuals that are given to hard work. Now, if you look at, for instance, the continent of Africa, Africa is a continent that is endured with all manners of natural resources. By far, probably Africa has more natural resources than all other continents combined. But painfully so, Africa is also house to the most poorest of people. Now you ask yourself, why the paradox? Great natural resources deposition, poorest of people. The answer is probably traceable to one thing and one thing only. In Africa, over the decades, we've become lazy. We don't really work as hard as we ought to, And hard work means innovating, creating, transitioning with the times. And that doesn't often happen at the pace it ought to on the continent of Africa. This is why we are where we are today. We basically are good at mining the resources and we sell them off in their primary state. We have no capacity to transition and use these natural resources and produce secondary and tertiary products. And that has been our downfall for years. And of course, the powers that be have become smart. They put a greater price tag on a tertiary product and a minimal price tag on a primary product. So what ends up happening is that we are often selling off our natural resources in their primary state, and we are selling them off close to nothing. And when the same natural resources now return back to us as tertiary product, we pay a greater price for it. And we need to wake up. We need to come out of our slumber. We need to come out of our sleeps. The African governments and the leaders in Africa need to look at life differently. Governments need to start, investing in innovation and technology. Governments of African nations need to start investing in the younger population, the youthful population, because this is the future. And we can't just continue living off by borrowing and borrowing. All the time we run to the powers that be, we run to European countries, we run to the United States, we run to China, and we are always just borrowing and borrowing and borrowing. Yet it is within our reach to turn around our stories. If you look at the natural deposit, be it uranium, be it diamond, be it gold, be it copper, be it oil, and if you look at the vast resources in our oceans, you will be puzzled, at how much power we have as Africa, as a continent. But because we are not really working hard as we ought to, we are paying a great price for our laziness. Our coffers are constantly bled because we have to pay greater price in return of the very same materials that we sell off as primary product when they come back to us as tertiary product. So it is time we have this conversation. It is time we engage our governments and challenge them and say, we need to now rethink leadership. We need to rethink how we approach life. We need to rethink how we run the affairs of our nations. We need to create a platform where young, talented young individuals on our continent who have the energy and the enthusiasm to go out and do something with their life. It's time we give these young people a platform. It's time we give these young people a chance to do something with their life. And of course, I do understand the value of education and how it is wonderful that we get educated. As I've said in one of our segments before, education helps us to become eloquent. It helps to package ourselves. We present ourselves better when we are educated. But it's not, the be it all. There's a lot of young people on this continent that are very enthusiastic, that are skilled, that they have that natural ability to do something. But because our governments on the continent oftentimes do not necessarily go out there and vet these young people properly, we have a lot of talent that is overlooked. We have a lot of talent that is not recognized. And we have a lot of young people that could turn around, the story of Africa. But because the leaders are not always keen on, really going down to the grassroots level and, recognizing these talents and picking up these young people and investing in these young people are basically living every day in frustration. And some of them might not even live to see their dream come to pass. And, hard work is so important that, in life really, there's no shortcut to getting anywhere worth going. It's not a silver bullet where you just press one button and then everything happens for you. It does not work like that, unfortunately. We need to realize that as Africans, we need to start holding hands now. We need to learn the value of hard work. We need to learn how to work together. We need to learn how to lift each other up. We need to learn how to basically, form a unity, in pursuing, the purpose of lifting Africa from poverty. And unfortunately, laziness and poverty always goes together. There was a wise king, his name is Solomon. In the book of Proverbs, Proverbs, I believe it's Proverbs 24, and it's about, I think in verse 33 and 34, he said that a little bit of slumber and a little bit of folding of hands, then poverty will pounce on you like an armed robbery. So this wise king knew something that we need to know today, that if you just sit back and wait for things to happen, it might not happen. And unfortunately, if you don't do something about it, you might end up in poverty. And in life, you reap what you sow. Galatians 6:7 says it as well. I always say, I've seen a lot of good things happening in Africa, but we need to really wake up and smell the coffee. If you look at Africa, for instance, the church in Africa, the Africans, they pray. And sometimes, when I look at how the church in Africa pray, I wish prayer was the answer to everything. Prayer has its place, but unfortunately, it's not an answer to everything. As a matter of fact, you can pray from January to December, but if you do not wake up and you do not get up and do something, you will still die poor. So it's time we really wake up and smell the coffee. It's time we really start, thinking outside the box. The road to success is always under construction. Basically, that statement, by insinuation, it means that if I want to make it anywhere, if I want to succeed in life, I have to constantly innovate. I have to constantly transition. I have to constantly, keep up with the times. I need to get in there I need to update my mind. I need to read. I need to know what is, trending in this hour, Uh, because if your mind is not updated, your whole life becomes outdated, unfortunately. And all of this has to do with hard work, nothing just, happen on a silver platter, you know. And if one goes around with that mindset of, everything is supposed to be provided for me without me necessarily having to do anything, that in itself is actually a mindset that creates poverty. And of course, unfortunately, this has translated also into leadership by far in many chances where you find individual enter in a space of leadership with a poverty mindset. And instead of this leader gearing up, instead of this leader, championing projects that will lift their nations and the continent out of poverty, they end up dragging the continent into poverty. When you find young people, they're cutting deals with politicians. They think, being an entrepreneur means, scooping up all the major tenders in government. That is not an entrepreneur, unfortunately. That is a tenderpreneur. And if you study the life of most of these young people, they'll scoop up a greater project today, and then 5 years later, he's broke. Then you ask yourself, this man, was given a project worth millions of dollars. He couldn't even keep it together for 10 years. Now, that's a poverty mindset, I mean, you get given over 100 million and it's not even more than 10 years, you are broke already. Come on. We need to rethink how we do things, understand? And value addition is always, realized when you are able to take a raw material and make a finished product. You look at roasting, for instance, in Namibia, as one of the great open pit uranium mine, but we do not even have a single factory that produces cell phones. Yet uranium is one of those great core primary ingredient you find in most of the cell phones today. We don't even have capacity to create nuclear energy. Yet uranium is one of the primary resources you find in nuclear energy. We got great deposit of diamonds in our ocean, for instance. We got Deb Marine, for instance. But we don't even have a single factory that has capacity to take that diamond in its raw state and translate it into a ring, for instance. I remember talking to a friend of mine one day. I said, with all these diamonds that we have, we still have to run to American Swiss and buy our ladies, the diamonds when we marry them. And here this American Swiss, not Namibian Swiss, not South African Swiss, not African Swiss. Where are we? Why can't we not convert these products into tertiary products ourselves? Other parts of the world are constantly changing. Look at this nation, Singapore. Singapore was considered one of the third world at some stage. As a matter of fact, Malaysia at some stage wanted to buy Singapore as an island to add to their state. But the leadership and the political system of Singapore and the leaders of Singapore had a better plan for their nation. They started reinventing themselves. They started innovating. They started transitioning. Where is Singapore today? One of the greatest, first world country today. How much of that can we say of Africa? It's very painful for me to say this, but sometimes when you look at Africa, it's as if we are going backward. We have gotten political independence, but have we gotten, for instance, economic independence? Have we gotten independent in our thinking? Because the greatest jail is not the one where they lock you up behind bars. The greatest jail is your mind. And if you do not liberate the way you think, if you do not liberate yourself from the mindset that keeps you, thinking, less than what you ought to be, unfortunately, you might end up begging for the rest of your life. And, begging is one of those things that, just eats away your human dignity, can you imagine our leaders always running to China to beg for loans? I mean, how do you feel as a leader? You know, you have to run to another man with your hands open, crying out for, you know, handouts when your nation is rich with resources. You know, when will we start thinking differently? When will we start, doing things differently? I mean, you look at vehicles, for instance, the automobile industry, you know, these guys, they produce cars wherever they produce them and they ship them over into our nations. We pay triple, quadruple the price of what they pay in the city where the factory is located. We have to pay for shipment. We have to pay for all of these things. Why can't we set up factories where we start to produce, vehicles in our own backyards, and then we bring down the price? It's all painful that African countries sometimes even a simple thing like a toothpick, you know, so minute. Some countries, in spite of the resources they have, they can't even produce a toothpick at a commercial level unless they pick a stick from a tree and start, picking their teeth with that. But I'm just a proper toothpick. They can't even do that. I mean, we need to have, a different conversation, and this is the one that I believe leaders out there will also get to engage. Start thinking outside the box. Doing things differently. And this is your brother Dr. Makemba saying, hard work pays and keep working hard. Africa arise, Africa wake up, Africa smell the coffee, and let's do things differently. Until we meet again, thank you very much.